Okay, great. Hi, everybody. We are so privileged. We're in for a treat. Today we have Scott Velasquez. I hope I said that correctly. Um, and what I'll do is I'll just do a bit of an intro to Pandion. I know we have a lot of repeat customers or viewers, but just in case you're new, we'll just go through what we do. Um, so Yeah, so what we're going to do, the first half, we'll do a bit of interview style with Scott. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up for questions. I'm going to open it up a bit earlier today because I know we're always rushing towards the end and I want to make sure people do get their questions in. Scott will be doing the Ask Me Anything, but we're going to delay it a week because he's not able to reply this week. So if you do have any unanswered questions towards the end, please feel free to put them down in the Ask Me Anything thread on our Creator Circle Facebook page. Okay, so a little bit about Pandion. I'm sure most of you have heard this before, but I'll just give a bit of an intro. Um, so in the towards the tail end of the pandemic, Rebecca, Trujillo Vest, Jordan Stobie, and myself, Carls, um, we all attended a songwriting group or a course even. It was called 6FS, Six Figure Songwriting, and some of you probably have been on that as well. And we made music over Zoom and it was amazing. We had people all around the world collaborating and we were so motivated by this that we decided we wanted to do something together to start something. We didn't know what it was going to be. And we kind of discussed this for like over a year before we decided on a nonprofit. And we decided that we wanted everyone to have access to music resources because we had an amazing time with Six Figure Songwriting, but we realized that we had to pay for that and not everybody has those resources. And so that's how we got founded. We do weekly sessions like these, but we've also started to do teen camps, which are for school-age children, and Rebecca hosts them at her studio in Venice. So that's been really cool as well. Okay, so let's just do our Pandion mission statement. Okay, so Pandion Music Foundation PMF is a 501c3 nonprofit that equips emerging music creators around the world with tools to help foster more equitable, attainable, and sustainable careers. Based in Los Angeles, PMF amplifies diverse voices to grow a more inclusive music industry by providing free weekly online workshops and wellness initiatives that connect independent musicians with leading professionals. And we are so privileged and we're in for a treat today. We have Scott Velasquez, who is a Texas native, now living in Los Angeles, born with the gift of chromesthesia. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Chromesthesia, yes.
Yes.
Meaning he sees color with sound. Among his traditional film and television music supervision credits, Scott has become a pioneer in the world of podcast music supervision. He received 2 AMBI nominations from the Podcast Academy in 2020 for outstanding music supervision for his work on Bunga Bunga and Fed Up, as well as a Webby Award for the original score sound design for both. Scott is also classically trained in vocal performance and has master's degrees in music supervision and music business from Berklee College of Music. Scott began his career in music in A&R, working in hip hop, rap, and R&B with the likes of Pitbull, Lil Wayne, and Chamillionaire. He's also worked alongside Wondery and Amazon Music to music supervise, license, and create custom music for over 2,000 podcast episodes. Wow. Scott has worked on numerous award-winning projects like Dr. Death at Wondery, The Shrink Next Door, Bloomberg, Wondery, We Crash, The Rise and Fall of WeWork at Wondery, and Joe Exotic and Dying for Sex, both at Wondery. They have been and will be adapted for television. That's exciting. Scott also was a music supervisor for the 2020 Biden-Harris presidential campaign. He's also written and scored original music and themes for shows like Bunga Bunga, I Am Kobe, British Scandal, Who Killed Daphne, Even the Rich, and the rewatcher Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Wow, that's an amazing bio. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to see if I have any comments. We've got people from New York. Heiku at Maui, I think I've said that right. Dallas and Texas is humid today. Chicago's in the 70s, New York City, Austin, Texas. Santa Monica. Michelle's tuning in from Santa Monica. Oh, the Bahamas as well, Calabasas. Wow, we've got a variety there. New Orleans as well. All right, everyone. Okay, so we've got Anahi in the back end as well. She's helping me out. So if anybody doesn't know me, I'm Carl's Wolf. My real name's Carly, but people call me Carl's. So you can too. And I'm based in England. Anahi is in LA, and she does our programs and she oversees our social media as well. Okay, so I've got so many questions, Scott. Scott and I were just talking about weddings and how expensive they are. And yeah, that was fun. So my first question is going to be one to do with chromesthesia. So I've heard of synesthesia, which Pharrell talks about. What's the difference between synesthesia and chromesthesia?
So synesthesia is essentially the overall condition. Chromesthesia is a specific segment within synesthesia. So synesthesia is essentially just the overlapping of two senses. So so like the definition of it's, if I remember correctly, it is the misfiring of neurons in your brain. So when you are using one sense, there is essentially like a crosswire, and you're at the same time your brain is activating another sense that is working in conjunction. So sometimes some people, as you're reading, they taste numbers or taste letters, or they see numbers or things like that. So there's a lot of different variations of synesthesia. Mine is specifically chromesthesia, which means I see color with sound. So anything that's tonal, anything, people's voices, a door closing, voices, like any type of instrument, like anything that creates a sound or a vibration that gives off something tonal, I see a color associated with
that.
it.
That is so intriguing. So
yeah.
So does it become overwhelming was my next question, because in a crowd or
it does sometimes. It does become one of those, it's a little debilitating sometimes. You know, it's a lot. I mean, imagine I love going to concerts, but you know, imagine going to concerts and hearing and seeing. It's kind of like, I always compare it to like you tripping on something, and like what you see when you're tripping on something is kind of like what I see on a day-to-day basis.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, so it's kind of like a learned, you know, thing. Like I've always had it, and I didn't know that it wasn't just a thing that everyone had until I was in like seventh grade, and I had to audition for this choir, and they made us audition on solfege. We had to sight read something on solfege, you know, do re mi, and I didn't know solfege at that point, and I panicked, and I just started sight reading on color, and they were like, "What did you just do?" And I'm like, "I don't know solfege very well, so I just did it on color. Is that okay?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, dang, I was like, I did not make this choir after that. And I did make the choir, but you know, and that kind of like began my little trajectory into like vocal performance. But it was the first time I had ever auditioned for anything, you know, like a little seventh grade kid. And I went up to my sister afterwards and they looked at me like I was crazy because I sight read it on color. And she was like, "What are you talking?" You know, so she was like, so that's like kind of when I realized, I was like, oh, this is not like a normal thing that everyone kind of has. And it wasn't until like college that I actually got to be a part of this like brain mapping thing that these neuroscientists were doing in Dallas out of Baylor. And they did this whole like brain mapping thing, and they like played sounds, and they like actually watched my brain activity and the neurons firing in my brain. And it was like really weird to like watch. You're like, this is how your brain should look if, you know, you're activating, you know, this sense it's in this part of your brain, but this is being activated at the same time. So it's just like it was really cool to kind of like watch and like actually see like a visual like representation of like what's happening.
But
and yeah,
validation
so
as well. Validation.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. And you know, and for a long time it was like, okay, God, I was like, I just like, you know, like when I work, if I'm not listening to music, I have to work in silence. Like I have to have complete silence, you know, or something like that. Because I can't listen to music. I just, because it's distracting, you know. And it's just like, okay, cool, you know, like I always like try to like when people I kind of explain like what I see. I was like there was like Fantasia. I don't know if it's Fantasia or Fantasia 2000, one of them. There's a scene, it's just a completely black screen and it's a bunch of
Mhm.
flashing colors through the
Yeah,
entire, I think it was like a Beethoven piece or something. I don't
yeah,
remember. But it was very much just like flashes of lights and just like extended, exposure to just like, different patterns and different hues
yeah.
and saturations. And that's kind of very much what it is. A lot of
Ah,
times it's like sometimes when someone flashes you with the camera and you kind of get, that
yeah,
it's like that, but it's weird. It's hard to explain,
yeah.
but yeah, it's just one of those things. So
Wow,
I
that's
was like, how can
so,
how can I use this? So
yeah. So
yeah.
my next question was going to be, so a lot of people that go into music supervision, um,
Mhm.
they kind of want to align with music and be in the music business. I just wonder from your early experiences, like when did you know, well, firstly, when did you know that you had that vocal talent? And do you come from a family that's quite musical or not so much?
No. My dad is completely tone deaf. But they're like everyone is like super smart. Like everyone in my family is like very like high performance. Like
Mhm.
both my parents have like 6 degrees. So they were like they expected, and they were very like business oriented. My mom was the dean of a college for 15 years. And so it was like kind of expected. Like you're gonna go into business, you're gonna do something like this, and now
Yeah,
both me and my sister, I have a sister, I have a younger sister, we both went into like creative fields, which is like very much the opposite of what they wanted us to
yeah.
to go into. I actually originally wanted to be a chef, and
Wow.
I wanted to be a pastry chef, and I worked with this really amazing chef, and I applied to go to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, and I got accepted, and I was really excited, and my parents said, nope, that's not an education. So I
Oh,
go, okay, fine, screw you. I'm going to work in hip hop. And so they were not also excited about that. But, because they were like, you need to get an education and you need to do something that is going to make you money really quickly. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I mean,
yeah,
like, I would rather struggle and be fulfilled than
right.
have a job. Because right out of college, I had a great job that I was making dumb money, on as a 21-year-old. And it was
Wow.
just awful. It was so awful. And I was like, this is not worth it because I just dread going to work every single day and I don't want this to be my life. And so, yeah, it's like I realized that after that I was like, I had this vocal talent, but I also realized early on that I was not the best. I mean, I'm a good singer, yes, but
Mhm.
I, there's nothing special about my voice. I was never going to be, nor did I ever want to be a singer in any capacity. I didn't want to be in a band. I didn't want to do opera or jazz. I didn't want to be a session singer. I didn't want to do any of that. So I was like, okay, cool. So I had these 2 degrees in opera and jazz that I'm not going to use vocally. What do I do?
Yeah.
And I had known that I wanted to do something kind of like what I do now, music supervision, but I didn't really know what it was called.
Hmm.
And my sister was actually, so my sister is like this amazing dancer and like super great. Like her at 16 years old, she booked her first music video, and it's a Britney Spears music video. She's one of the
Wow.
primary dancers in Dance Until the World Ends. And that was like her first like major book that she got on her first audition that she ever came to LA for. And then she ended up working with Mia Michael. If anybody works in like the dance world or anything like that, Mia Michaels is a huge choreographer. Tabitha Napoleon, are these just really great? They were also choreographers on So You Think You Can Dance. If anybody
Oh,
watches that
okay.
show,
Yeah.
but my
I know that show.
sister for Four Seasons was the primary choreographer. So she would essentially work with the choreographers and teach the choreography to
Hmm.
the contestants. And so growing up, we would go to. I was raised very Southern Baptist,
Hmm.
and so I we were not allowed to listen to anything except Christian music. And so I think that's another factor about why I went
Yeah.
into music and TV and film, because I was so deprived of all of this music. But we would go to Best Buy on Sundays after church, and we would have to lie to my parents, be like, we're just gonna go, like listen to some new Christian music. And then we would go like bin diving at Best Buy. And eventually my sister started letting me pick out her music that she would dance to, and that became kind of like our little bonding thing, and I was like, I really enjoyed that. So that was like my first like little music supervision kind of thing
Oh.
that I started out with. um but then I was always just kind of that person that a car commercial came on, I was like, oh, that's Arcade Fire, or that's like
Hmm.
whatever off the third album. Like I just was that person that just knew songs, and I would go to a party and someone would be like, put a playlist on, or something like that. And I was like, this is fun. Like, I like doing this. I like showing people and introducing people to new music. And so I was like, okay, slowly but surely, I kind of was like, okay, this is like a fun thing. So how do I use all of my random talents that make no sense, and don't really have a direction, and essentially find somebody that will pay me, I was like, because it's one thing to have like great talent and really just like, okay, I'm gonna work really hard and it's gonna work out. I was like, sure, you can have crazy goals, but you also need to figure out, you need to find someone to pay you, to do it as well, so it was just, how do I take everything that I've learned and find kind of a niche. And so in college, I yes, like as you said earlier, I was in A&R, I was developmental A&R. So specifically, it's kind of very much a dead art. It's like what people used to do a long time ago. They would spend a bunch of money over a certain amount of years and develop artists. No one really does that anymore. I think Billie Eilish and Justin Bieber are the last kind of people that people really like spent years and years developing before they allowed them to release music. And so that was my specialty. I worked with artists. I wrote some really big songs as a ghostwriter that I get no credit for, but it was a trade-off because it's like, like it was like, this is my first sign. They wanted to, they were not writers at all. And so anyways, it was just like, okay, I got to do it. I look back on it now and it's like, oh, look at that song, has 1 billion streams, and it's like, I have nothing, I get nothing off of it, but that's okay. Like everyone learns, I feel like everyone goes through that, you live and you learn and stuff like that. But yeah, so I started an A&R in hip hop. And like you said, I worked with a lot of really big hip hop artists, and I was on the team that produced the Carter 3 and the Carter 4 for Wheezy, worked with Chamillionaire, Timbaland, a lot of Pitbull, a lot of those guys. And then after that, I was like, I don't know if A&R is the thing for me, but I'm good at it, And so I decided to go to grad school afterwards. And then my last quarter of my second master's, one of my professors got me an internship in LA, and I was working with Alex Fitzavas, who's now head of music at Netflix. And I got to work on amazing shows like How to Get Away with Murder and Scandal, and we did the Hunger Games franchise and just like some really fun stuff. So I like kind of got to cut my teeth and move to LA knowing no one. And I was like, I wasn't formally trained in anything, I just like, I was an intern for 6 months and then I wasn't anything. So it was like, and to your point earlier, a lot of people were saying, we want to be music supervisors. We want to be music supervisors. And it's like, it's hard, especially right now, like it's hard, like Hollywood is terrible, features and TV shows are going, it's really hard to find a niche, especially in an occupation and a job that is only like really 500 strong, like there's not a lot of, and then you take off, being, finding a niche well enough to where you can make a livable wage off of that. And then you take off, actually being comfortable, it's hard, it's really hard. So I think it was right before COVID, a lot of things were shutting down. I was working for music festivals and things like that on the side when I didn't have a show or something like that was going on. And then everything shut down. And I had been thinking, I was like, okay, do I go straight back into festivals? I was working with like Golden Voice at that point for some things. And then I was like, do I do this? I was like, I kind of need to make a choice. I was like 28 and 29. And I was like, I need to make a choice on where I'm going to go, and the direction that I'm going to fully kind of like jump into and invest in. And I had those kind of two, directions. And then it was like, okay, this choice was made for me. When COVID happened, there was no live touring. There was so I was like, okay, cool. I was like, I guess this is how I'm going to learn. And I had a relationship with Wondery at that point. They had reached out as a podcast. If you guys are podcast listeners, if you're not, you're probably the wrong person to talk to for anything else, because that's very much what I do now. But they reached out and they asked me like, hey, we need to license some music. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like they're like, do you license music? We know you're a supervisor. It's like, yeah, it's like, that's bread and butter. And at that point I was like, I will take anything that comes with the paycheck, So I started working with them, and they had asked like, it was very weird. It was at a time where nobody knew what to do with podcasts or anything like that, and
Yeah.
people were just like, oh, we're just going to throw in Smells Like Teen Spirit right here and we're not going to pay for it. It's like,
Nirvana. Ooh, that's hard to get
yeah,
paid.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, and yeah, in any capacity. But people were just like fair using everything,
Yeah.
because they were very much of the mindset that podcasts could cross over and fall under either news, which
Hmm.
a lot of that can be made the case for, or it was coming from radio where you had your public performance
Yeah.
and and you could just use whatever like a radio show, and so it was really convoluted in the sense that people just didn't understand the medium and bad decisions were being made very quickly, and no one was really paying attention to this space, and I was like, I think there's an
Ooh.
opportunity for me to do something here, and so I just kind of became the podcast advocate because no one else is doing it. And I was like, if no one else is going to do it, then, and I want something to be done, then I should probably do it myself.
Wow.
And because no one's doing anything, and I was like, I was like, I can be a part of the conversation, or I cannot be a part of the conversation and complain on the sidelines when I don't get something that I want.
Hmm.
And so I was like, all right. So I was like, I'll just do it. So I just jumped in. I started reaching out. I started having conversations with all of the major labels and publishers. I was like, hey, who is doing this? Who is doing this? And just asking. And no one could answer any of these questions. I go, why? Why is nobody doing this? And, finally, people were paying attention, and things like that. And I got a lot, just things developed really quickly. And, I kind of became that go-to person for everything. And just one thing led to another, and it became very much a business, and I was able to take clients and develop everything for them, not only for major labels and publishers. I developed all of the licensing protocols for
Wow.
every type of quoting that they're going to do for their podcasts, but also working with clients to help them develop and understand music licensing for this platform.
So you kind of
You
created
know,
that infrastructure from scratch, right? Because
very much
people,
so, for
people,
both sides.
yeah,
Yeah.
people describe podcasts as like the wild, wild west, but really, when you think about it, radio has been happening for a very long time, and it's
Yeah.
kind of the same. But um, well done you for advocating for musicians because you exist and you've created this infrastructure. It means that you're protecting musicians' rights. And
Yeah.
am I right in thinking that you license but also do sound design yourself?
So I try not to do sound design, but I will score, I will write, I will license. So pretty much everything. Like sound design just takes a ton. It's interesting because for podcasts, if you're looking at like a TV or a feature, sound designers are separate from composers,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
separate from music supervisors, are separate
Mhm.
from editors. But in the world of podcasts, editors and sound designers are very much a crossover. Sometimes you're also the composer, like you might not be an actual composer of original music, but you are sourcing those cues to essentially create a cohesive score,
Yeah.
and so I do everything for most of my clients,
Mhm.
and um we write theme songs, we score entire productions, we license music, we music supervise it, we have to do the cue sheets, we have to, it's just kind of like, it was like, how do I make myself so irreplaceable that they can't get rid of me,
Yeah.
essentially? And that's
Uh,
what I did, I
I
went in
like
and I said, what are you doing? Are you creating music? I was like, if you are you doing it as a works for hire? Are you doing it as a commission sync? Like, how are you doing it? And then if you do own this music, what are you doing with it? Is it just sitting here? Do you have publishing entities created? Are these released on the DSPs? How are you making residual income from music that is just sitting here that you own? So it was a lot of this business, that I learned from like A&R and the label side and publishing and working in TV and film and releasing OSTs with features in TV shows, that it was a niche that no one was thinking about. And I was like, I'm just like, let's just do it. I'm just going to do it and ask for forgiveness later. And no one was doing anything about it. And so I just kind of jumped in and I was like, let's do it. And I was like, here, I did this for you, by the way. And they're like, oh, cool. So,
yeah.
and now I'm the go-to person. They're like, hey, you have all these logins. We don't. And I go, that's correct. You don't. So
I like it. Make yourself irreplaceable. That's fantastic. I
yeah.
wondered, do the briefs differ majorly for a podcast than for TV and film? Are they similar in that they'll tell you what type of thing that they're looking for? Do they know, or do they fall to you?
Yeah, everything is pretty, everything. It's my briefs that I send out, at least. I can't speak for other people, but
Mhm.
my briefs are very much taken from my time for in TV and film. It's the same kind of brief that I would send out. It's, hey, we're looking for music for this spot. Here is a log line. Here is a brief about, either the scene or the spot or the show. Here's a couple of songs that, we're taking reference from.
Yeah.
We need something that has a certain BPM. If I'm really crazy, I'll list a key. We need lyrics that mention X,
Yeah.
whatever it is. So I'm fairly descriptive because I have essentially been working with production on what they're thinking. And I am one of those that I like to find my own music, but I'm never going to discount sending it out to a wider net. Because I like finding the music. I like digging. Like, that's what I do. Like, that's what my coordinator, who's here as well, Jolena, like, that's what we do. Like, we will create the briefs, but we'll also look for music ourselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I'm talking with production, we spend a couple of weeks just digging into music and just figuring out like what we think. And they're like, here are things that we think would work well, but we're also going to cast a net
Mhm.
just to see, because you never know. You never know. There's so much music out there, and
Very much.
with with how licensing is, especially right now, that not everyone will give you perpetuity for licenses, which is expected for TV and film. You have to get really creative on how you license things. So sometimes I might have this great, amazing song that works perfectly for the spot, but I need something that's in perpetuity.
Mhm.
I need, and I can't do that. They'll only give me a 3-year license for whatever I have for this budget. So you have to get kind of creative. It's almost like working in like an indie film. Like, your budget is awful, but you still need, to get great music, how you have to get really creative on how you can license really big songs. It was like, okay, great. Let me license it for a festival, and then let's do a step deal. If it gets licensed for distribution, then it costs this much, or something like that.
Mhm.
So you kind of have to create those barriers to essentially get what you need, but also, you get the great music, but it might be a limited term until we figure out where else we can put this, or how big the reaction to this is going to be.
Okay, that sounds awesome. So I have a question regarding how people make money from their placements in podcasts, and I wondered, does it make any difference if the podcast is streamed or downloaded? Is there a different mechanism to receive money depending on whether it's streamed or downloaded onto a platform?
So
Um,
it's just sync.
okay.
So it's not like a song where you get back ends, or a public performance, or anything like that. It's very much done as a sync. So it's not like you get a share off of a sync, off of like a stream, like you would for something on like iTunes or Apple Music, or I said iTunes, God.
You know?
But Spotify, or anything like that. It's very much like TV film kind of thing, where
Yeah,
you get where you're paid your one-time sync fee,
I see.
essentially. Yeah,
Okay.
but I try to do, especially if we do it as a works for hire, I always try to make sure that I can, like, if we release something, like, I always try to push it out as like an OST, if we do like custom music, and release it out into the DSP, so at least the writers can collect their writer share,
Yeah.
or something like that. So there is at least, a back end, especially when I'm asking, writers and, top line as an artist to do it as a work for hire. I want to be able to at least give back something, so they're not just kind of like left in the lurch and get just kind of nothing, for the
Yeah.
rest of the time. So it's like, at least I can put it out into the world and have you guys collect on your writer share. And so, yeah.
That's encouraging.
So
So I might open it up to questions, just because this is such a cool subject and it's another mechanism for musicians to make money from. I'm just I've got like 2 pages of notes and I haven't, or questions, and I haven't even scratched the surface because just your bio, you've done so much. So you run Freeson Sync, is that your agency?
yes, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's frisson, it's French.
Frisson, Frisson.
But it actually means chills, but it's Frisson is essentially when you hear a song that gives you goosebumps.
Mhm.
That is, it's essentially the French word for that. So it's frisson. Yeah,
Oh, I like it.
yeah.
Very nice. And so I was having a look on the website, and
Oh
you
God,
have
that thing
no,
needs to
you
be
have
updated.
oh no, listen, it's better than
So
mine.
bad.
No, it's not. It's not at all.
I just
But
I just have no time to update that thing. I was like, if you
no,
go to
that's
IMDb, you're good. But
it's
like that thing
fine.
has fallen to
It's
the
fine.
wayside.
It's absolutely fine. No, I was just there was a part there that said, people can shoot you an email. So I wondered, do
Hmm.
you have a mailing list, or do you have like other sync agencies that you sort of gather music from? I know you said you look yourself. I just wondered if someone was interested
Yeah.
in, you know, showcasing their music, how would they do that?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of times, like, we'll send out briefs. If I have a project, you'll probably most likely get the email from Jolena.
Okay.
But when we send out the brief, she'll send it out to everyone on our briefs list. Hey, if
Okay.
you have music or if something like that, I mean, the amount of like custom music that we do is probably like 60%
Hmm.
of like my creative. The other half is the sync side about, searching out music, but because of the flexibility and because of the rights that I can get, and from a financial standpoint, so many times writing custom makes more financial sense than licensing something,
Yeah.
because we also get perpetuity. We also can kind of use the song wherever we need to. So I mean, like, we are always looking for top liners and writers and top liners writers, because that makes you more valuable.
Mhm.
And just everything. And we write a ton of stuff in every genre. Like we wrote, the first time I had done a country song in forever, and it was amazing. And there's going to be a fairly huge use for this one that's coming out soon.
Oh,
And yeah, so we're always looking for you know everything. And I wish I could be like more specific, but you never know. Like, it could
yeah.
be hip hop, it could be jazz, it could be, like, I worked on like um a big project last year with the Seuss estate, with the Grinch and a couple of SNL
Oh,
um people. And we wrote this really cool version of You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, and I got to work with a couple of the SNL cast on
wow.
recording a version of that, for with them. So it's just like, and then I always need session players as well. I need, it's like, hey, if you play an instrument, it's always great to know, like, if I have, like, we had, there are several instruments that you can always hear. If you're a professional musician, you can always hear, oh, that was a MIDI. Oh, that was a
Yeah.
MIDI, and it's always brass and it's always strings for me every single
Yeah,
time.
strings and
You can
horns.
hear the vibrato. Yeah, you can hear the vibrato, and it just sounds so fake. So if I have the budget, I'm going to pay somebody to come in. So we've got some great people. I got to work, my horns person that I got introduced last year is his horns player, and so that's, like, it's always nice to have a plug-in, for something wherever, to have, need soul fields, like, hey, I need someone to play oboe, on this or something like that. Because if I can pay somebody to do it, I would so much rather pay somebody to do it and just because you get the energy, you get,
Yeah.
it just feels so much different. Even, like, and it does. I think sometimes for an untrained ear, I don't think people can that much tell. But I was like, I know if I can
Hmm.
do it,
Yeah.
like, if I have the capability to be able to make this as authentic as I can, then I want to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, great. So I see some questions in the chat, but what I'll do is if any of you would like to ask Scott a question in person, please raise your hand. Um, and if not, I can ask the questions that are listed here. So I'm just gonna have a look in.
Oh, can
Yeah.
I actually? There's one that uh someone named Lily asked,
Yeah.
and she said, "What's the newer current process now to collect podcast royalties via PROs? Is it true it used to be absent?" The answer is, it is still absent, and there is no way to collect royalties on podcasts, because the PROs have not even set up protocols to track podcasts.
Terrible.
So all of these cue sheets that we're doing, they have no way to make any type of back end royalties on any of these, because they're not even tracking them, which is awful. And I immensely apologize, but I am
You're doing
having
your bit.
conversations I am having
Yeah.
the conversations with them. I have been talking to them. I annoy them every couple of weeks. How are these conversations coming? Can I sit in with you? Can I help you figure out how to write these? Because I did this with with the
Yeah.
labels and publishers. Let me sit down with you, and because there's really not a lot of other people that are are understanding how much is potentially being missed out, monetarily and financially for especially writers. Like I think it's really important for writers to be able to collect wherever they can. And so those are the conversations that I'm having. But yes, it is absent and it is still absent. So
And even though
yes.
you've created a really solid infrastructure, they're not really recognizing that part.
We are. And the nice thing is though, a lot of the shows that I'm working on now that were originally audio only
Mhm.
are being turned into video.
Yeah.
And they are being put up for viewership on like some of the bigger platforms like Prime and Freebie and some of the other streaming platforms. So that is a way that you will potentially be able to collect on the back end. But as far as audio podcasts, you're going to hear on like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or your traditional podcast DSPs, there's no way to collect because they are not tracking it in any capacity.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know.
It's I'm hopeful that that changes very soon. Okay, so we have Marcus. I'm gonna ask you to unmute. Go ahead, Marcus.
Yes. Thank you for joining, Scott. I have a couple questions, but I'll try to keep it to like two. One, how do we join, if we're interested in joining like Freeze on Sync? How do we join on both the custom and sync side? If we're interested on both of those, is it two separate processes? And then the other question is, are you involved with trailer music at all? And if so, what is the involvement there?
Yes, I do. Yes to everything. So I do trailer, just because it's like, I mean, like I said, it's not separate like you do for TV film for most of the time. The same like production team that is doing the actual episodes is also working on the trailers. So a lot of times we'll try to do a crossover with a lot of the same music that's used for the theme, also in the trailer, just because it creates cohesion with the listenership, especially when you're pushing out for promo.
Mhm.
So I usually bundle that in the original license that I'm doing for theme music. I will include that as like an RSS feed or something like that as a trailer use. And it's really boring for me to talk about that, but it is most of the time it is the same team that is doing that. And they're usually working with blanket licenses that we're pulling from, like larger like catalog libraries like an APM or an Extreme or something of that nature. If there is a budget and we can bring on somebody to score something mostly within the episodes, then as the actual composer, then we do, I think, try to structure the deal in that they would score trailer, but also have the ability to pull from the SFX libraries and the blanket libraries and things like that. Um, in regards to how do you get involved, um, we have like a list of kind of composers and top liners and things like that and what their specialty is and things like that. So if that's something you're interested in, I think that would be probably something that we would route to the question part, like post this conversation. And um, I will give actually Jolena, I think they'll pass on Jolina's email.
Okay. Do that.
So you guys can reach out to her if you want to send music or something like that, for us to listen to. I mean, like I said, feel free to send us music. We will listen to it. I would say the parameters, please, no more than like five or six songs. Um, and then just explain, just say, hey, I'm, blah blah blah, we met here, because I'll get so many of these emails. Hi, here is my new song, please listen to it. I don't know who you are, goodbye. I'm one of those kind of like a tough love person. It's like I don't care I have so much going on that if I don't know you, I just don't care. And I'm really honest. Some people are like, I'll try to listen to it. I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna waste your time. I don't want you to waste my time. If you put in your header, hey, we met at the Pandion thing, like, cool, let me listen to your music because I told you I would listen to the music. If I say I'll listen to it, I will listen to it. But if you blanket email me with like no connection, I'm not gonna do anything. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so please please send us music. If you are just wanting to like pitch music, perfect, great. Send me 5 songs. Or hey, I'm a top liner and a writer. Here are some of the things that I wrote. If you have associations with something, do you have a cut on? Hey, I wrote this song with Jelly Roll, or whatever. It's unreleased or something like that. If you have unreleased music and it's still on a major label, you can still send it to me. If you have a cut with like a writer, you can still send it to me. We get those unreleased things all the time. And music supervisors love unreleased music because we all very much have like only child syndrome where we don't want to have we don't want to have things that other people do. So, don't, like we love things that nobody else has. We're jealous. We don't want to be the second or third person to sync it because then you're just a me too. So we're very jealous when it comes to music. So we love our unreleased stuff. But yeah, I mean, send us an email, send me an email, send Jolene an email with your capabilities. It's always nice to know like, hey, I play piano. Well, cool. But I want to know your level of performance because like I just played piano. I was like, cool, I can also play chopsticks. Like I want to know I have played piano professionally for 10 years. Here's a little bit about me. Sell yourself. If you're wanting to work with me, if you're wanting to bring your skills in, like I'm always looking for, sell me a little bit. Send me 5 or 6 songs, send me your capabilities, and then we'll file you where we need to, and we'll reach out when we have it. And I promise you, if we need you, I will reach out. I think it's when we get to the point where I have people every like month or 2 months or something like that. Hi, checking in. Hi, checking in. I love that. But I promise you, I will reach out to you if I need, like one of the oldest like sales techniques things is like, if you want something, you make it happen. You will make it happen. Like if you want to buy this Gucci top and you really want this Gucci top, you're going to figure out a way to make it happen. So it's the same way. It's like, if I need an amazing trumpet player, I'm going to go through my Rolodex of people and I'm going to reach out to you. I will always reach out if I need something, but sync is a hard game. I know most of you guys know that it is very much a lottery game, and it's very much on being, at top of mind, in front of mind. So I understand when people email me, hi, how are you? What's going on? I want to send you my new song. I understand that, but we have such a high turnover and we are doing so many things all the time. I mean, we oversee 80 shows that are always ongoing. And that's why, and the 2000, I think is more like 3000 at this point. It's so much, and we are managing such high volumes that we have so many more things than the average music supervisor does, because we are very much from a supervisor role, on shows that are already up and running, that we have to move very quickly on things. So we reach out very quickly if we need something.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you so much, Marcus. I'm gonna ask Athena to unmute.
Hi, I appreciate the invitation to this. I really enjoyed hearing Scott's story. I love hearing about how people got to where they are. I've been taking sync classes for about 7 years, well, the first 5 years. Very notable people in the business who taught me. And I know exactly the pressure that Scott has on his shoulders. And they warned us, you need to have your ducks in a row before you approach these supervisors. Their job is hard enough. And I must say, it's taken me years, because I'm trying to make sure when I do approach a supervisor, I know what I'm doing. And, they told us that, if you do it wrong, you can ruin yourself. You get one shot at this kind of thing. So I'm not trying to scare everybody, but, I've known about these realities for a long time. I have a zillion questions, but I was trying to think of a question that everyone else here might have. And, Scott, how much pressure is going on right now in the industry to be using AI more and more for this reason?
Not really. Like I think it would really hit. I think the biggest thing that I'm actually seeing right now doesn't really affect music licensing
Hmm.
per se. I haven't, but what it is, it's actually been a really nice aid because what some of my international clients are talking about doing is using AI and essentially developing a show that is recorded in, say, German or Japanese or something like that, and using the creator, using the host, and having AI make an English dub of it or something like, and it essentially it expands your readership, or sorry, your listenership, because you are now able to reach an audience that is a non-native speakers. So, just like you do with Netflix, or Hulu or Prime, you can go and you can click that dub, into whatever language you can watch that in. You couldn't do that before with podcasts. You would have to have somebody completely dub it in another language. And that's also a thing that you're probably going to start seeing trend in TV film. It's just going to take a lot longer because there's going to be a lot more guidelines around it. But a lot of people are kind of talking about the ability of these international and foreign language podcasts being able to finally breach into English speaking only demographic and listeners because of something like that. So as far as AI, I mean, like I have used it a couple times in like songwriting just to like more give me like ideas. It's like, okay, we're writing a song about this. I need, like, give me a couple of phrases that talk about this that rhyme with window, or something like that. And we're like, okay, cool. Here are some ways that we can, like rhythmically phrase this, this whatever that we're talking about. But, as I don't know how many of you guys know, for AI, if you do write a song with AI, that publishing becomes, it becomes, public domain. You cannot collect on songs that are essentially written with AI. So if you say, write a song in the style of Taylor Swift about blueberries, cool, and then you record that song using those lyrics, you may not collect on that publishing because you did not write that song. All of that just and I don't know what they do with the publishing end of that. I mean, it just goes in public. It just goes into, just whatever. But yeah, for anything that you're using AI and you're writing on, if it's, like a majority of it, you can't collect on the publishing. So.
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry. I was just talking to myself. I was just saying, I didn't know that. Wow, that's very interesting. We've got Tim Putnam. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Fire away.
Cool, thanks. Hey, Scott. Just curious, what is the mix of like vocal music versus instrumental in the shows that you're working on?
That's a good question. It kind of depends on the show. But most of the time it's going to be like BI. It's going to be a lot of like background instrumental things for in episode drops because it's score. And they're not going to be like, a lot of times, like what I try to do is for the big like kind of feature, that's going to be very much your trailer, your theme, and your outro song, like your last feature into your credits. Because it is mainly an audio only platform, when you have songs with vocal lines that are running under a soundscape, that are also, sorry, my dog's barking, that are also running under people talking, having a dialogue, you're kind of creating a storyline. Having vocals in a song fights with the dialogue. So a lot of times we interweave it very much to where songs are and lyrics are hitting in points where there's nothing going on, because it does fight. And if the lyrics fight with the dialogue, it's not going to work. Yeah.
How does that influence like when you're listening to music submissions? Are you looking for vocals or are you cool with instrumentals?
Yeah, a lot of times like the bulk of the licensing that I do is they're going to be theme licenses, and they're going to be and that's uninterrupted. Like it is, straight up, just like intro, just like a theme that you're going to be watching for like, Game of Thrones or Severance or, whatever, all of these songs that you're going to have, playing, we're going to license that. And most of them are lyric driven because I'm working with the team essentially, to help reinforce the mood and the theme and the ideas, to reach the demographic that the show is, reaching out towards, like I've licensed Taylor Swift and Meghan Trainor and like a lot of these, creative decisions are made based on the demographic and the style of the show and, all of that stuff, like you see the massive success with something like Fallout, the specific type of, genre of music that they were using. So we create these sound palettes with the editors and the sound designers and production that then the editors or the sound designers are using to pull from. So we're like, okay, cool. We're very much going for a 1950s, 1940s kind of style, like in the style of Fallout. So we'll pull all of that from wherever we can and we'll put everything in there. I'll license theme music. I'll bring in people to write, extra, music and creative and things like that. But it just depends on the show, like we did one, Jolene and I did one we were working on for like a year and a half. And it was about Milli Vanilli. And, so that was a lot different because it was very much like a biopic, it was fab. It was like that whole team. And, obviously we had to license a ton of music. So the uses were very different because, we had to structure those in a way that you were hearing the vocals, and things like that for purposes of the story. So it really depends. I try to throw in vocals as much as I can because I think it helps. I think it helps reinforce, what's going on to back them up with vocals. A lot of times I lose that because it ends up fighting with the dialogue. But, I want to say it's a good mix. I want to say it's probably like 50-50, on working with that. But it really depends, like it really depends on the production team on how they like to use music, and stuff like that. For a lot of the bigger video podcasts that I like work on, a lot of those, they use a lot more vocals because you have the extra synths in there. So like I work on a show with like Kiki Palmer that's like really big. And there's a show called We Play in Spades. It's with like Nick Cannon and it's very there's a lot of hip hop that's that's driven, and I didn't want to just license beats, because those get bored after a while. So I was actually working with a label and publisher that had just some great music, and I approached them and I asked about a blanket license, and they have these great huge songs, have 100 million listens and things like that where I was able to pull from and use. And so we really took advantage I was like, look, these artists have cachet, they have a listenership, and they have a draw. So I want to be able to take advantage of that to help this to essentially use their followers and their listeners to be able to drive to, this content and vice versa. So yeah, it's very dependent, which I think is also the same for TV and film as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We've only got 5 minutes left, sorry. So Scott's been really generous and given you Jolena's email and said 5 tracks. We do have our own Pandion disco playlist, but we do limit that as 1 song per person. So you've got 2 options. You can send more than 1 to Jolena, and you can still send 1 of your favorites to the Pandion playlist. We'll forward our Pandion playlist anyway. So you guys are really lucky this week. I'll just see if there's anything else in the comments. I think
I will say, can I ask, I don't know if someone already put Jolena's email in there. If you can do me a favor, if you can, instead of just dropping music into her email, you can send it to our disco. That's going to be the best thing because it actually, and I'll send you our inbox for that one. Please do not abuse it. I will send you that one. We were talking earlier, I think you were talking about, I think it was Athena talking about making sure that when you approach supervisors that you have your stuff together. One of the biggest things that I always look for in there is your metadata. So And I think and for a specific audio only platform or a very audio forefront platform, one of the biggest pet peeves that I have is when I'm going and I'm trying to listen to a spot and I go into the metadata and your lyrics are not in there. Drives me insane, because then I have to spend an extra 5 minutes seeing if I can find the lyrics. And a lot of times, Jolene and I have done this all the time. It's like, if I can't find the lyrics and I don't care enough to try to actually decipher what you're saying, I delete the track and I move on, because I can fill that spot with something else. So at the speed that we are having to go through songs for projects, we have to listen to like 500 to 1,000 songs that are submitted, for all of these briefs. The easier you can make it for us, listing the BPM, listing your writer splits, listing, everything, making sure that you have an instrumental readily available, a wave, not just an MP3, but making sure you have a wave, making sure that you have your lyrics. Lyrics are like the most important. If I have to be able to be like, oh yeah, that hook right there, it works so perfectly, and that's how I would cut the song. It's super important to have and to make sure that. So it's a way for me to kind of like check and see if I can rely on you to provide what I need.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Scott. I really, really have enjoyed this. It's gone so quick. If there are any questions I've missed, please do put it on the Ask Me Anything thread. There will be a delay of a week though. And Nahi, can I just bring you up? I'm wondering if we get Scott's disco via email, what's the best way? Should we still tell people to send it to our disco, even if it's more than one? I'm wondering what the best way to do that is.
If y'all already have like music and you want to do it that way, just send me what you have. That's totally fine. But I always open it up. Like I'm happy to listen to music, and when I speak, a lot of times I will sit down and I will listen to the music, because we have found some great fun writers and stuff like that. So I will listen to the music, as long as like it's five-ish songs, and a lot of times, like you guys know, like when we're listening to music as supervisors, when we're going through something, my creative process, just so you know, I listen to something for about 10 seconds, and I listen for about 5 or 6 seconds, maybe 10 seconds in the very beginning, to see if it has the right kind of vibe. Then I skip right to the middle, where you should probably have that hook come in, and I see if that's going to work. And if it's a maybe, if it could maybe work, then I move it over to a maybe. And I go through everything about 3 times. So I listen to it. If it's a maybe, if it could potentially work, I move it over to the maybe. And then after I'm done listening to all this music, then Jelena and I go through the maybes, and we say, yes, this could work. And then so we're listening to it numerous amount of times, but I have to make sure that I can go through something really quickly and just do a vibe check really quick. And that's kind of how we can listen to music. Because if I were to listen to 1,000 songs that were 3.5 minutes, they couldn't afford me at an hourly rate. So we have to go very quickly and just kind of go through, and that's what it is. It's a vibe, like I listen to music and I do stuff that the last time I was doing a project, I organized the kitchen and I was listening to music, and I said, it's the songs that make me stop what I'm doing and listen, that I'm like, oh, that needs to be moved over. So if it's a song that's just kind of in a background, it tends to not. I like weird also. I like really weird songs. I like unique voices. I like dissonance. Like Eric Whitacre is one of my favorite composers and directors. He was my director my senior year of my undergrad. And so like he's been on my bucket list to have composed or something. Yeah, it's very cool. But anyways, I love dissonance. I was a baritone and bass too in college. That was my voice part. And so I love that he wrote for altos and basses instead of sopranos and tenors. So anything that is just like weird arrangement things, just thinking outside the box. I like when people kind of like push the boundaries. So that always catches my attention. So.
Sorry, that's just my head just exploded at Eric Whitacre. Sorry. Okay. I think what's best then is, because Scott said up to 5, send it to our Pandion Disco. We will forward it to Scott. That's probably the easiest thing to do. And all that's left really is to say thank you so much, Scott, for your time.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and everybody enjoy the rest of your evening. Just quickly, sorry, I know we've kind of gone over, just to say next week is just a community listening session. but that's a really good way to meet other collaborators. So you might get to hear a top liner that you really want to work with. So bring your links, share them in the chat. That'll be next Wednesday. And I believe it will be Jordan and Anahi. Well, it'll be one of us. Won't be me though, because I'm on vacation next week. And just thank you everyone for joining.
I also went ahead and dropped our outreach email.
Okay.
If there are any other questions regarding like the disco links or anything like that, feel free to email us and I will try my best to get back to you all very soon. And then we will have the AMA posted on our Facebook creator circle. So if you all have any questions that weren't answered today, feel free to drop your questions there. And yeah, thank you again, Scott. This was amazing. Thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you all had an amazing hour.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.